Hello, everybody, and welcome to Eternal Brews. My name is Myriad, and today we're going to be showing off our deck final five. This is a Praxis 5 drops list, primarily focused around basically getting an aggressive setup with final moments and just playing general mid-range. It's a real interesting list if you're wondering how well we're doing with it. So far, we are about Master Rank 8 in Expedition, so feeling pretty good about overall possibilities as far as it goes, and I think it should be a lot of fun to give this a go in Expedition if you're interested. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of the deck. The basic idea behind this deck is that we're using a small amount of ramp to push ourselves into the 3s and 4 drops, and then get into the 5 drops, then play final moments if we can, or just value out our opponent with good stuff. There's plenty of different options here. So moving up the list, first off we have Apprentice Mage and Jeering Yeti. Jeering Yeti is currently a substitution for Kieran, the 2/1 Endurance Flyer. I've been using both, and I think that both have their merits and different sort of benefits. Jeering Yeti's advantage is that it can be inscribed for reliable power against removal-heavy decks, as well as played in addition to other stuff against removal-heavy decks to sort of create extra power, get you into those 5 drops faster, and give you that temporary power bonus without having to have something on the board. On the other hand, it suffers more against relic weapons. It isn't killable by Call the Hit, which is really nice if you want to set up more aggressive presence, but there is definitely a situation where you can use Endangered Kieran as well and get some good value out of that. In the 3-drop slot, we run Hexivores and Barbarian Gorillas. Barbarian Gorillas are your standard attachment answer now that Bullseye is gone. You use this primarily to do just about everything. Break down dinosaur nests while establishing advantage, break down poachers' menageries while establishing advantages, crack through aegises at 6 to break down poachers' menageries once again. Anytime that your opponent has any sort of relic-based or relic weapon-based strategy, Barbarian Gorillas can be used to play multiple copies. In addition, this deck often uses Miner's Musket. We typically run 4 copies of it, so having a full complement of Unleash cards at higher costs allows us to occasionally produce some reliably crazy wins where we basically just play a million 1-cost Barbarian Gorillas and value our opponent that way. That's just an extra synergy in general. Like, you want Barbarian Gorillas just as a 3/2 that breaks a weapon, but it's a really, really good benefit that also adds to the power of this deck by quite a bit. Hexivore is cheap and makes Zito's sad, so yeah, it's quite good. I think Zito Housecat has been a pretty common card in the Expedition meta for quite some time now. Having Hexivores is a really solid response to that, and it's also a great mid-range 3-drop to be playing down to get some good benefits out of. Dunehill Clan. So this is also a slot that you can play Arcanum's True Heart, but I think that Dunehill Clan is a little bit more reliable, primarily because it has a lot more stats to start, it has endurance right off the bat, and it's not vulnerable to a lot of the standard stuff that you might see getting into very, very quickly. Shrivel, the Rat King. There are a lot of different options where basically Dunehill Clan is going to hold the board a lot better against those particular decks. At higher level Masters, this was an important swap. I think Arcanum's True Heart is actually going to be better in like Bronze or Silver tier, where you are basically just running up against people who don't run enough removal or silence or like different tools to answer that kind of thing. But later on, when the removal starts to get more reliable and people start to get more concerned with that kind of cheese, Dunehill Clan is the opportunity. However, this is the place where you want to put Arcanum's True Heart if you want to go run away with the game, and it's a really, really strong build to do that because that really chains very well with Final Moment. We're using Steward of Prophecy. This is another card that I think is specifically for like higher level Masters lists. You can use anything else of value at this slot, or even like throw in like some extra burn, some extra damage. Really, there's a lot of different things that can go into this slot. This is a way for us primarily to deal with Black Book, who is a lot. Yeah, Steward of Prophecy is a good way to deal with Black Book. It trades pretty well with just about everything, and it can answer a large amount of cards in hand before they come out, such as, for example, Inferno Phoenix, Krogar, and Riva Crimson Blur, all of which we're getting into now. Inferno Phoenix is one of the bread and butter cards of this deck. It deals 6 damage when it comes out. It dies and then gives a bunch of other stuff double damage. If it gives Riva Crimson Blur double damage, then you tend to get into some really wild combos very, very quickly. But it can also do stuff like give your Barbarian Guerrillas charge, give your Steward of Prophecies charge, give double damage to your Krogar Burdened Heroes. There's a lot of different things where this card just sort of continues to provide value and the pressure you need to win the game before it gets too deep into the unleash stuff. You generally want to be trying to end the game before like things get very, very crazy, because at that point the unleash cards start to take over, and like if you can actually end the game at turns 5 or 6, or like in those situations where like the game is starting to go into the mid range, if you can do the damage to actually push the damage through, then you don't have to value out any further than your 5 drops, which is the basic idea behind the deck. Riva Crimson Blur is the other card for significant aggression, and we didn't do a review of Krogar Burdened Hero when he came out on Wednesday. I was having some separate issues with recording, and then I had mouse issues all weekend, so I did primarily level up this deck on mobile. But now that we're into recording it, we can talk a little bit about Krogar Burdened Hero. First things first, though, Riva Crimson Blur refunds a lot of power. On 6, it typically allows you to play one 5-drop into another one. It deals a decent amount of damage. It can kill different targets while effectively setting up a good blocker that is very, very hard to deal with in the air. It's just kind of a really good sort of centerpiece card. This is one of the ones that I think is most useful to cut in certain circumstances, but it is also just a pretty strong card for your top end, and it chains well with stuff like Exodus, Final Moments, and other things like that. The primary combo here is something along the lines of, oh, I need to deal enough damage to you to win, so I'm going to play a Riva Crimson Blur, I'm going to attack in for 4, I get the 4 damage, and then I Final Moments, come back with an Inferno Phoenix, and that's another 8 damage on top of that with Riva and Inferno Phoenix. You can get a lot of surprise damage out of nowhere by creating the power necessary to play a Final Moments and repeat your turn with no blockers available. And that can be really, really powerful, and is a big, strong reason why this deck has a lot of sudden burst potential whenever it actually gets board presence, which is pretty commonly what it's going to do, because every card that you're playing does something to establish board presence while also harming your opponent's board's position. So eventually you get into a position where you can attack profitably. At that point, you double up with Final Moments, the card that gives you an additional turn at the cost of potentially murdering yourself. And you got to be really, really careful with this one, but it is a really fun way to win a game. So, okay, so Krogar Burdened Hero. Let's do our little review of this card now. This card's really good. It's a 5/5 Overwhelm for 5. It's the promo card for this week up until the end of Wednesday. Summon, silence an enemy unit with 3 strength or less. That is units with 3 strength or less, not 3 power or less, which means that you can hit a number of useful targets with this. Most notably, it addresses a lot of the biggest meta concerns, including Riva Crimson Blur and Inferno Phoenix, but also what I think are probably the 2 most powerful cards in the meta right now, Black Book and Feln Adept, both of which have seen significant benefits lately. Black Book is a card that is just really, really hard to address with any sort of spell-based strategy because the card discards spells, so you need a unit to basically silence and effectively neutralize it. Steward of Prophecy is probably preferred because that means that you won't get the attachment discard happening to you, but if you're playing a largely unit-based deck, this gives you a backup plan to silence that card out of the air. In addition, it hits a lot of the other really scary threats in this particular setup. Parliament Elder is a really nasty flyer. There are a lot of different cards that have 3 health or less that are just like very, very important to hit. But on top of all of that, the card is pretty efficient, has Overwhelm, and gains you 5 health, meaning it effectively neutralizes a lot of the Stone Scar and other red aggressive strategies. Typically, this would not be what we would be doing if we were looking for a more aggressive red or yellow deck. I think the card is a little too slow in some circumstances, but when you are actually like looking to play the value game and win the game in a more reactionary or defensive standpoint, Krogar Burdened Hero is an incredible card for addressing specific meta concerns and does that job very, very well. The extra health is a big boon, the huge body is a big boon, and the silence ability is absolutely paramount for dealing with some of the largest threats in the game right now. If cards like Feln Adept and Black Book ever come down a little bit, I imagine this card will come down in value a little bit as well. But at the moment, most of the scary things in the game generally have 3 strength or less, with the exception of most of the stuff that we are running. So this deck kind of addresses itself very well on that note. All right, so final things, we have our spells. Searing Fist is an absolute necessity for dealing with Parliament Elders and Feln Adepts. I was using originally the Unleash Soulfire, but I found it to be a little bit too ineffective at dealing with the large amount of 4 health units in the game. In addition, Furious Magnaventress is down to 4 health as well. There's a lot of different targets that are pretty easy to clean up with 4 health, and it can even be pretty good against Black Book, which has that 7 health again, so you can attack in, deal the damage to kill it, and then like basically get the benefits that you want. Miner's Musket is on the other side of the fence. It doesn't do a lot of damage and it clears very few things, but it does address one specific threat, which is Plunk Wumpkin, while also giving you discounts on Doonhill Clan and Barbarian Guerrillas. If you get a discount on either of those 2 cards, you are almost guaranteed to win the game on value alone. Barring any sweepers, that is just too much of a tempo loss for your opponents to deal with. It is entirely luck-based whether you get those 2, but getting other things like a 3-cost Krogar or a 3-cost Inferno Phoenix, or even better, a 3-cost Riva Crimson Blur to just get everything going and get you extra power on the turn that you play her, all of that stuff is really, really good. And on top of that, this card deals well with Aegis threats. It can be thrown on top of a bunch of other options to deal little bits of extra damage, and in situations where your opponent is not playing units, which they generally should be, you can punish them with damage consistently while also playing your own units and basically just getting continued presence and damage in. So this card's really, really strong. We use Exodus and Final Moments as inscribe cards to gain extra power. Sometimes there's four ofs of either of these. I think that at the moment it's currently about like just having a higher variety of like fairly powerful cards in the deck, but fixing power is pretty important, and the combination of Exodus, Final Moments, and Jeering Yeti means that we're pretty consistently getting to 5. I think honestly this could use a few more inscribe cards in the list, so finding places to cut might be a good little tweak if you're interested in making some changes. We'll show an alternate version of this list and some of the other different variations that I've been playing with at the end of the video. Finally, we have Cleave. This is basically an extra on top of Barbarian Guerrillas, the primary reason being that Dinosaur Nest and Poacher's Menagerie are both incredibly popular and powerful cards, and if you don't have a tool to address them, they will take over a game. So having an answer that is very, very aggressive, builds the board, or builds the damage to your opponent's life total to set up for that final moment swing, that kind of stuff is really, really good, and fire decks have a lot of good relic removal at the moment without even having access to Bullseye. So this is very, very good stuff for basically just dealing the damage that you need. Obviously, this card comes out if the deck becomes entirely focused around like Feln, and you don't see any more Poacher's Menagerie or Dinosaur Nest, but I don't think those cards are going away in Expedition, so it's important to address those particular strategies. So yeah, that's the basic idea. 36 big units, huge mid-range attachment, very few spells or attachments so that you aren't as vulnerable to Black Book, while also giving you the access to these inscribe abilities, getting you the power to play reliable things that continue to answer the board and build value over time. We use 2 Zoltan Conclaves. Sometimes I use 4, depending on what's going on, but for the moment, like, we don't really need to take that much damage and to fix our power. We're running 2 red and 2 yellow. Some cards that I have not touched on are Display of Passion and Display of Insight. Oh man, the Time and Fire displays, both of which are fine in this particular format. The Time one is very, very good if you see a lot of different relic stuff building up. Mystical Shackles is really popular right now. Poacher's Menagerie, of course, Dinosaur Nest. If that's happening, then Time is a really, really good option because you get that kind of option. But it doesn't really address a lot of the flying threats, so it's not currently on my list as a very powerful card for the setup. Display of Passion is a little bit more interesting. The Ornate Katana is really strong on a lot of these other units, but I found that the restrictive power cost combined with the fact that the one thing that it's supposed to address, which is Black Book, it just gets discarded to. I didn't really feel like it was providing a lot of extra oomph to this particular text. So, but interesting thoughts to consider, to be sure. That and Arcanum's True Heart are all like reasonable substitutions that I think do belong in certain versions of this list. So play around with the numbers and let me know what you think. We're going to go into some videos of gameplay, and then we'll show off alternate variation with a little bit of Stone Scar mixed in. And until then, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the vids. Cheers. All right, we are ready to rock and roll. We got Baron Hill as our first opponent. And right now, I think the 2 cleaves are not really particularly strong early on. I like the power base here a little bit, but missing double red, I think we'll redraw, see if we can find some better inscribes. During Yeti, Apprentice Mage, this is the kind of hand we want to have early on. It's nice to have a little early interaction. I tend to look for Searing Fist pretty early, primarily because of the presence of Feln or Miner's Musket, but in this case, I think we're going to accept the fact that we can just ramp up and do a lot of very nasty stuff very early. I've got 2 Jeering Yeti, so I'm going to inscribe 1. We want to have at least 4 power in our opening hand if we can, because we're trying to get to those 5 drops. It's nice to just have 3. Having 4 is generally going to guarantee that you have your whole game plan all set up from the very beginning. Okay, so my opponent sought power and has 1 power open with Shadow, which means that they're pretty likely on call to hit. We can counter that by playing Jeering Yeti instead of the Apprentice Mage. So, simple stuff. Does mean that we aren't going to get our immediate ramp, but we should be in good shape if we attack, see if we can get some sort of small removal, and then if we can't, we'll play the Apprentice Mage, and we'll see if they give us a power burst or not. I think there was a pause there, so could be call to hit, could be something else. We'll find out in a bit. But at the very least, I am able to play Riva Crimson Blur here. And thinking about it, it looks pretty good. I can set up a second Riva or a Miner's Musket. I can get a bunch of damage in. Let's go for it. I have a lot of empty power here, so it's likely that something will happen, but we can probably weather that while also dealing a bunch of damage to them. Okay. So far, so good. Swinging on in. We're going to see what they got. It's a Field Medic. Okay, that's not a card that I've seen very commonly in Expedition right now. It will kill the Apprentice Mage, which is a bit of a bummer, and it also gains some little bit of health. But I'd say overall, they're falling somewhat behind here. We're not going to play the Miner's Musket because it doesn't do anything against an invulnerable to damage unit. So we're just going to set up here, and then maybe play Riva into Miner's Musket again afterwards. Attacks. There's no reason to not just accept the attack here. It's not like there's a harsh rule in these colors. They could like Saloon Massacre or something like that, but I think it's pretty unlikely. Okay, well, there it is. Regardless, it was fine to take the damage. We certainly didn't want to like just bluff out and risk losing to other things. Okay, so here's 6 damage in the air, followed by another 2 on Miner's Musket, so we're getting a good clip going. We have a lot of extra power, obviously, but nothing to spend it on, unfortunately. We will get some discounts here, and if we can use Riva with Unleash cards, particularly Unleash cards with discounts, that's really going to give us a lot of benefits. Opponent's got Wisdom of the Elders. The slower decks tend to fall pretty fast to these types of lists because we're very aggressive and we're pretty aerial focused, so a lot of stuff you're going to draw, not going to be quite as strong. Okay, Saloon Massacre was a problem, but I think this is going to go pretty well. Swing, swing. We might see a call to hit. Nope, good to go so far. Take another swing. Dismantle. Okay, cool. That's their trick. Good to know. But we have 8 power because of Riva, so now we get to do Dunehill Clan. And just keep doing Dunehill Clan. And unless they have 2 Saloon Massacres, that should be game. We'll see how it goes. Now, like I said, this is an alternate for Arcanum's True Heart. Arcanum's True Heart means that if you're playing with... oh! Well, that's great. Okay, they had to discard a Boundless Knowledge for that, so I guess that's okay. As a bonus, we could just... I do like that it costs 2 or less, so that's why we got hit by End of an Era. These are not cards that I would say are common in Expedition right now, so but that's to be expected. The meta is always changing. But it looks like our deck can weather the changes. We're going to take a quick look at what all the other options are. And yeah, that should do it. Searing Fist will get enough damage through with just the Overwhelm. I mean, we already have the damage even if they don't have blockers because they played their last power, so no cards in hand, that's the game. So yeah, you can see some of the basic like power type stuff. This deck tends to win by inches. It is possible to get big bursts and win the game faster, particularly if you're playing the version with Arcanum's True Heart or something that's like a little bit more aggressive. But we are generally trying to just sort of win the game by continually valuing out and then blowing out with Final Moment or just winning on sheer value of cards. And this works out pretty well in this case. In addition, like I would say that a lot of our value comes actually specifically from value of health. We put our opponents in disadvantageous positions with Riva and with Inferno Phoenix, and the lower health and the constant risk of charge flyers means that they have to play more defensively, lose a lot more units on blocks, and just generally like trade worse, which is very helpful stuff. So let's give it another go. All right, next round we're up against Paradox. I've got a Praxis Tome and a Seed of Impulse. We got an Apprentice Mage and a Steward of Prophecy available. If I can play Praxis Tome, Seed of Impulse, Apprentice Mage, and keep the Apprentice Mage, I can get to Steward on 4, which is pretty dang strong. The real risk here, of course, Felon Adept, as always. Like, if you don't have a Searing Fist in your opening hand, it's just a thing that you kind of have to deal with. We have a couple of different potential answers to this. We'll talk about this more in the different variations, but overall, pretty good to go. Okay, Battlefront Dasher is a lot of damage right up front. I think we're going to hold on to Apprentice Mage here and just let it attack this time. Normally, I'd actually block the Battlefront Dasher because we can pretty reliably continue to play stuff and be in okay shape. But considering we have Riva Crimson Blur coming up and the Steward of Prophecy is a pretty clear 4-drop that we want to be playing, we're going to just hit it now. Okay, first Riva. And we can hit the second Riva as well. And I think I'd be pretty cozy with that. So we might want to just attack with the 2-2 to get pressure on. I think that seems pretty strong. Let's do it. Because, like, if they block, then that allows us to trade with the 3-2 there, and that's pretty good. If they don't block, then we can still do the thing we want to do with Riva and get benefits that way. So, not a big deal. Okay, Stonebreaker Bow knocks out our power. We can block here, but I can also just play another Steward and keep attacking them. I don't think that they are the pressure here. I think some stuff in Stonescar can really cause problems here, but having 2 Stewards and a Riva available means we're probably not going to die to the Sill site, so let's just go ahead and knock out the next thing. Stonescar Adept number 2. I think it's probably better to hit Riva, but it's close. Alright, so knocking out their high-value cards. We have blocks now if we want them. There's the Stonescar Adept. Again, I think I'm pretty comfy with just not blocking here. Yeah, should be good. And then we play Riva, and that sets up just a wide variety of good stuff for us. Also, notably, if they'd actually managed to play their Rivas, we have Krogar, so we're in good shape there. And we're going to gain 5 health off of our Krogar as well, so... Plus we have a 2-2 chump blocker for 3-2. Once the Apprentice Mages have gotten you to 5, they can be used pretty effectively to trade. They just have decent stats, which is not the common thing for your good stuff. Okay, we got a Flyer, 5-4. Doesn't have Taunt, but it is nasty. Searing Fist takes care of that pretty easily, and that'll be game, I think? Yep, looks good. Simple, effective, push. Does lots of damage, gets in there, deals the damage that you want to do, and then if you have the extra power left over to final moment, you can go in for a big burst and get exactly what you want. So, good stuff. All right, one last go. We're up against GT 100. Got an Apprentice Mage and a Searing Fist. That might be enough. It's a good start. We got good power, so we're pretty likely to draw gas. I think we're going to go with it, so give it one more shot. We have upped the number of final moments in the deck just so that we can have a chance at doing the thing that the deck is known to do. I sometimes run 4, and this is one of those times. Okay, we got a Miner's Musket, and since I'm not currently going towards anything, it's better to discount the things that I'm going towards than to increase the power for the things that I don't have yet. So, here we go. I wonder if they were playing Plunk Wumpkin. If so, they might be changing their strategies. We could have waited, but I think this is pretty good. Okay, Barbarian Gorillas. So, it is a really strong play. One that we can do for 5 next turn. I'm a little concerned about Elemental Fury in a Time Primal deck. Not only that, but there's also, I think, something that does 2 damage to every unit. But I think overall this should be okay. Let's go ahead and do this, and we'll set up for 5. And also, we'll see if we get some removal. If we get 4, that's fine. Plunk Wumpkin. Okay, so Plunk Wumpkin is definitely a card. Okay, Barbarian Gorillas. Barbarian Gorillas. Barbarian Gorillas, Barbarians, and Barbarians. It's a totally reasonable number of units to be playing on turn 4. Attack for 2, I guess I am kind of opening up some issues with Inferno Phoenix, but the amount of aggression we have here matters, and will set up final moments for us, which is a bit of a risky play this early, but I think should be a lot of fun. Okay. Do the swingy thingy? Do the swingy thingy. Here we go. What's the big risks? There aren't that many lifesteal units. Alright, we gotta roll the dice on this. Absolutely. Cons and Sorry General. Okay. Take our additional turn. They get a card draw. Inferno Phoenix plays. And then swing. A+. Perfect. A demonstrable demonstration. Alright, those were some games. For examples of how the deck can be altered and changed around, we do keep a clone. This is a version with Fevered Dispute as extra proof against Felon Adept and Endangered Kirin instead of the standard Yeti. We also sometimes change around other different aspects of the deck, but this is kind of like one of the current modulations that I'm using while playing around in Expedition. Pretty minor changes. For a more major change, here is our Shadow list. This version is, again, trying to address Felon Adept a little bit better by including Call the Hit and Stonebreaker Bow. That also gives us a few more options against Plunk Wumpkin, which I like having good options to kill Plunk Wumpkin early on. But this is more reactionary and is just a little bit of a different type of aggression. There's certainly some other changes that we could be making, but this was an idea to just sort of play with it in 3 colors a little bit and fiddle around. So those are the lists. I hope you enjoy. Go wreak havoc upon the meta, and enjoy getting wrecked by Felon Adepts. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate all of y'all. We'll be back with a review for the next promo card on Wednesday, and I imagine we'll be putting up some more videos in the meantime. So stay tuned for that, and see you next time.